Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever this podcast may find you. It is I, your MC of the evening of this Tuesday podcast, Gavin.
And I, Justin. And Crickets.
And we are joined by Crickets because Jordan had better things to do on Monday night work meeting.
I'm sure he's enjoying the hell out of it.
I'm sure he is. Talking about buildings and shit.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's just us two, which is totally cool. We'll catch you next week, Jordan, hopefully. And until then, I'll be drinking your whiskey.
That's what he gets for leaving it here.
I mean, it's for the podcast. It's for, like in the movie Hot Fuzz, it's for the greater good.
Yep, and also...
The greater good.
It's a random side note, because we'll be talking about Saabs in this episode for a minute. One of my friends just sent me a guy that apparently is in a Colorado Saab group that they, quote, say, looks like a Kirkland brand version of me.
Oh my God. He's got more meat on his bones. He's got more muscle.
He's definitely a
That's
bigger
fucking
dude.
funny, though. The mustache is pretty on point.
Yeah, and even a lot of the facial features, too.
Here, show me. Yeah, I can kind of see it. That's fucking funny.
Oh, man.
There's a type.
Oh, yeah, that's probably the fourth doppelganger I know of.
So when are you getting your dental degree?
Architect, not dental. Architects drive Saabs.
I thought dentists also did.
I think dentists drive Volvos.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Much stereotyping is going on in this
I mean,
episode.
it's for the... At least it's been known to be for the executive that doesn't want to necessarily go on the beaten path and wants to kind of be different and quirky. So I kind of identify dentists, doctors, lawyers. Not so much lawyers. Lawyers are pretty...
Well, I even remember when Top Gear did their Saab special back in 2009, 2011 when they went defunct. One of the I don't remember they didn't really quote an exact statistic, but somewhere somebody found it eventually that Saab drivers were the most educated on the road because I think more than half of them had at least a master's.
Yeah, that's the new cars, not the used ones, Justin. Don't try to elevate your IQ with your cars.
Well, no, I just ruined myself because I have zero college. So I just went against the grain completely.
You're good at that.
But yeah, so on to the reason why we're talking about Saabs. This weekend, which was September 28th, marked 4 years to the day that I got back on the largest road trip of my life that I've taken to date, and the longest car I've owned to date, which is my Saab 900 SPG. A lot of people in Utah know me as a Saab guy, even though I've owned more Audis, even more Fords than Saabs, because I've owned a Focus, an F450, and then had an F250 at one point for a hot minute.
I keep on forgetting that you actually owned that F450.
Yeah, owned it outright.
That was like the beginning of our friendship.
Yeah, right before I sold it and made some money. It was great. But, so, how did I get to kind of acquiring the Saab is kind of a weird story. The beginning of my knowledge of Saabs was in high school when a friend of mine, whose dad was a trained Saab mechanic back in the day, had one. His name's Alec Wilson. Shout out to Alec. He's awesome, and he still owns a Saab. It's not that exact one. But, so that car was laser red, so I think just kind of a bright, very stereotypical red. When it's polished up, almost similar to, like, Gavin, you're better at things like this than me. The Ferrari red. What's the name?
There's a number of reds, but Rosso red is kind of the Ferrari
stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah, this red polished up is about the same hue as that one.
Okay.
You know, very, very bright red.
Yeah, a very eye-catching red.
Mm-hmm. And so that was the first...
It's also known as Ferrari red.
Yeah,
like people that don't know Ferraris, they just say, yeah, it's Ferrari red. But I think the color... the actual name of the color is Rosso.
Yeah, and the actual name of this one was Talladega Red. So, but it's a very similar sheen to it. And that was the first Saab that I ever laid eyes on was in high school and rode around in it. And I remember us knowing nothing, going in and dicking with the boost controller and the injectors and a few other things, and then realizing that the second you would get into boost, it would cut all boost from an overboost function. So then we called his dad at like 9 p.m. Hey, how do you like trick the overboost into, not shutting down the car? That fucking car got destroyed. But that car taught me, I liked it because it was quirky, but that car taught me how bulletproof they can be, because he actually, his senior year, drove it up to a ski resort, and somewhere along the line, it lost all of its coolant.
Oof.
It seized the engine. Towed it back to his dad's shop. Dad pulled off the head, took a large rod, pounded the cylinder, unstuck it, put it back together, and it just started right back up.
Oh my God.
Now, granted, it wasn't like a full bore, like fat seize. It was more just like, okay, slow until he can get to a pullout, slowly stopping until it just got so hot that it locked up after he stopped it.
Sure.
But still.
Seized motor is seized motor.
And that car at that point, I believe, had close to 500,000 miles on it.
Jesus. And you're just, where are you now? Because just shy of 400?
No, I'm at like 340 still.
340 still?
I haven't driven it much in the past 2 years. Not nearly as much as I used to.
Right.
Because it was at daily for a minute. But, yeah, my car's well over the 250,000 mark. Over the 300 mark by most calculations. And what I mean by that is this. The only exact number that I know of the mileage of that car is that it was at 189,000 in 2001.
Right. So it's all calculations. So it could be at 360. It could be at 400. It could be
at 280. I mean,
you don't know.
These are all the calculations that I have are based off of what I know the previous owner did with it and how much he drove it. And the odometer already being intermittent 2 years before it finally completely stopped working in 2001.
Gotcha.
So I'd imagine it was probably at around 200,000 when he bought it, and he owned it for 15 years. 14 years, up until 2015 when he sold it to me.
Yeah.
And he estimates that he basically drove it for mostly just the summer. It never saw the winter.
Until you had it.
Until I had it. And then it was outside a lot of its life, sadly. But
that's unfortunate.
It is. But considering that, it's held on pretty well.
Yeah.
But he estimated he probably put about 8,000 miles a year on it. He didn't have crazy commute. He didn't have lots to do, and so it was mostly just either...
Car wasn't on load a bunch.
Commutes during, like, weekdays and with some weekend fun. Because during that time, he slowly rebuilt it. And to paint a picture of what my car is, it's lowered by 2 inches all around statically on H&R lowering springs, Coney adjustable race shocks.
Yeah. Looks good. Looks great.
I think it's the perfect height for that car.
I think so. Yeah.
It's not too low. It's still usable.
It's still usable, and it also handles very well, though.
Surprisingly, yes, for an old chassis like that.
Yeah.
And then he proceeded to the AC and cruise control already weren't working anyway, so he removed those system, which in that car removes about 150 pounds of shit just because it's old AC.
Not bad.
And then let's see, he got a set of wheels in the Saab community that are known as Super Arrows, which are deep dish 3-spoke wheels, fairly stereotypical to Saab.
Sure.
They were just never offered on that car. He got a set of those, made them straight and true, and put a nice, he just had some basic tires on them because he wasn't really canyon carving. There's not really canyons to carve out in Boston.
You don't say.
No.
It's mostly cobblestone from what I take it.
Yeah. More. Not quite, but it's a lot of just wooded roads.
Yeah.
He redid the headliner. Just a bunch of small stuff over the years that just naturally goes wrong in a 30-year-old Swedish car.
Yeah.
And then the final stage was the head gasket went. So it got, head remachined. And although I haven't found evidence of this, we do have reason to believe it was poured and polished at one point. After pulling off the intake manifold, and just the way it behaves compared to the other ones.
A little more aggressive?
A little more aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah. And it has a slightly different intake tone to it than some of the other ones.
Is there more of a quack?
It's just a little more brash, which is another thing that he didn't do. Is actually the original owner that did, was they cut a hole in the fender. On those cars, they're interesting because fenders aren't bolt-on. They're welded on.
Okay.
And so there's basically fender Wheel well is all metal. There's
Yeah.
no plastic. And then front and back of the wheel well, there's space, and that's where they have the fuses on one end. And on the front end, originally the cruise control, well, they cut a hole into there and did it professionally, and pour 15'd it and rust proofed it and everything. And then that's where the cold air intake goes in there. So it actually has a legitimate outside of the engine compartment area that it gets cold air from.
That's perfect.
It is perfect.
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, and right next to
Why can't everyone do that?
I know, right? Because that hot air intake, bro.
Bro, just like on that Fiesta ST I drove with AJ that one time.
Right?
Yeah, I was looking at Fiesta STs almost 2 years ago now. And I was test driving a few, and there's one at RC Automotive that had clearly been modified. And the way that the exhaust was routed was definitely not an ideal place. I think it was like behind the engine.
What the hell?
Where it was hottest. So
you mean the intake?
Talk about the intake.
You said exhaust.
I meant the intake.
Gotcha.
I meant the intake was pointed towards the back.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. People.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. So basically how I found that car, I had been looking for a while, just kind of casually. I still had my, at that time, I had my S6 wagon. It was just after I'd bought it.
Your UR.
No, my...
Oh, the C6?
The C5.
C5?
So the C5 S6 wagon with the 4.2 V8. That was my daily at that point because I had just traded out of my C3, which is actually called the Type 144 for whatever reason. But that was my Audi 220 Valve Avant. And
yes.
I had just moved from that to the S6.
Gotcha.
Because that was in March of 2015.
Okay.
And this is September of 2015.
Okay.
I had a massive vacation plan that fell through, but I already had the time off work, and we were driving, so there was no plane tickets or anything involved. So I just was randomly browsing around on the Saab website. Oh, I'm so retarded. I'm sorry. Oh, boy, I'm going to hell. I was browsing around on a Saab website in the classified section and found this car. It was a 88 900 SPG in Edwardian gray, looked very sleek, and long description, but a low price. And I was kind of curious. I called up the guy. His name's Nate Heckenberg is his real name.
That's a fantastic name.
It is. He's a cool guy, too.
Heckenberg.
He had he was also an Audi guy, too. He had 4 Audis.
Oh, funny.
I know, right? It's weird. But started talking with him about the car. He told me, when he got it and everything, all the stuff I've already kind of iterated. And then I was kind of like, why are you selling it for only $2,800? It's worth probably, with that clean and that kind of a history, worth probably more closer to 4 or 5. And he's like, well, here's the thing. And I came to learn this a little more later. Saab guys are fairly ultra purist. A lot of them are. And to the extreme that some people won't even put a non-Saab bolt on the car.
I was going to say, you don't see a whole lot of stanced out Saabs.
Very few.
Yeah.
And so he's like, they generally have 2 problems with this car. They love how clean it is, but they have no clue how many miles are on it. The odometer has basically never worked in my ownership. I never bothered to fix it. And on top of that, they don't like the fact that it's lowered and it, has a few things done to it. Even though the exhaust and many other things had never been touched, and in his presence, he never even tuned it technically. It was still on stock boost and all that.
Is it anymore?
No, I upped it a little bit. Because basically that car was the introduction of the electronic boost controller.
Yeah.
So on that car, you can actually take it apart and adjust what they call pots, which are just 3 little knobs.
Fresh pots?
Fresh pots.
Fresh pots!
I was waiting for that. So at that point, even that hadn't been tweaked. But just the fact that other things had been tweaked kind of turned a lot of people off. And so he didn't really... He more or less was vetting people to sell it as well. He really didn't want to sell it, but the wife wanted a garage spot.
Gotcha.
Kind of a thing.
Pick your battles.
So I talked with him for like a solid 2 hours, and this was Saturday. And basically just came to a consensus that I want to buy it. Give me a couple hours to go see if I can find money.
Sure.
Because I'm thinking as I'm going around, he's like, I prefer cash. I've been burned before by checks. He's like, I want cash because we'll probably be, like at the time that we're able to meet or whatnot, whenever, like however the hell that works, it's probably outside of banking hours, et cetera. Who knows? And he's like, and I don't want to sit here and force you to wait for the car just because I want to make sure the check clears.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, how the hell am I going to do this? So I go to America First, which actually shout out to them. I've banked with them for years. I have several different banks I bank with, but that's one of them. And I've always had great luck with their auto loans because I go up to the lady and I say, look, here's the deal. Car's worth about $5,000. I want to take out a loan for $4,000. I'm paying him $2,800. And, I'm taking out more, obviously, for some cover registration when I get back, but also to help fund that trip because that was a much longer trip than I was anticipating.
Right, so you need some kind of padding for that.
I needed some gas cash as well as, like, hotel cash and shit like that.
That makes sense.
And so she's like, oh, okay. I mean, that's a little unorthodox. I'm like, I know. I know. And he wants cash. So, like, here, let me, like, got on the phone with him. We talked it all through. She got all the info. She verified that it was truly a car for sale. It took about an hour, just, them making sure their due diligence. And I walked out of the bank with an auto loan for a car that they had no clue about and had no title with an envelope of $4,000 in cash.
How did that feel?
I was very fucking nervous. Because I also realized I had to carry this envelope of cash all the way across the country.
Oh, yeah. Like... How would that have sucked if you just got, robbed or...
Oh, yeah.
It gets lost in security, through your baggage check or whatever or any of that stuff.
I know, and then I'm questioned, why do you have $4,000 in cash? Because that's
$4,000 isn't like that much money.
It didn't that much, but you never know. They might still question
They might,
things.
yeah.
So I walked...
If it was like $30,000.
Yes, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So I walked out of there, called him back, said, hey, I'm going to find a ticket. Where's the nearest airport? He said, it's just Boston, the main international airport there.
Yeah.
He's like, he lives in what's pronounced in the New England way as Worcester, which is actually Worcester.
Worcester.
But it's pronounced over there Worcester. That's how you, for whatever reason.
I mean, we have shit like that here.
We
There's
Tooele.
I was going to say Thule.
Oh, yeah. So... he basically told me where to fly in. I bought tickets, and then the next night, which was Sunday night, I went in and had dinner with my parents and announced, oh, hey, I'm flying across the country. Oh, hey, I'm buying a car.
Right.
To which I got staggered response.
That's a nice way to put it.
I think that was the last time they ever really questioned me buying a car. But after that, it was more just like, roll eyes.
Sure.
Anyway, so... flew at the Monday, which is the next day, flew out to Boston. And then it was a daisy chain to get there because I had to get a bus to another terminal, then a bus to a bus stop, which was still about an hour away. Then he picked me up from there. We drove to his house and got there, and it was like...
He couldn't pick you up from the airport?
It would have been about a 2.5 hour drive each way for him.
Jesus.
Yeah. He's just kind of...
I don't know. I feel like he should have picked you up because you flew all the way from here, all the way across the country.
He helped me like set that all up. So he's like, look, here's what's going to be best because I'm not going to get off of work in time, and this is kind of late notice for me to just randomly dodge out of work.
Okay, I guess so.
Because it was the day before.
Yeah.
And he also, obviously, as we all know, selling used things, you never know if it's...
You never know who you're going to get on either end, for a seller's perspective or from a buyer's perspective.
So he didn't know, he doesn't have any reason to know whether or not I'm going to buy it, despite the fact we've agreed on a price and talked about everything. Because I've had that happen and still it falls through.
Sure.
So he picked me up, got to his house. Car was better than almost even better than described. Like, very clean, all original, every VIN tag, never been in an accident. Paint was like starting to show his age, but, had mostly been cared for its entire life. Any of the major rust had been patched and things like that over the years. I mean, I got like probably about $2,000 of new in-box spare parts that he just sent me with. He even tried to send me with a transmission, but I didn't have room.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I could have had room. I could have muscled it in there, but there was also 2 spare doors he wanted me to take too. So it was like, I just kind of said, I'd rather save the heavyweight and just not. So bought it and got out of there at 8 p.m. on Monday. And I had no. I got my days all wrong. This was Saturday. And then I had planned to meet a individual that I knew in North Carolina. He had flown up to D.C. the prior day.
Okay.
So that night, I was going to drive from from Boston to D.C., drove through the night, visited a friend at like 3:30 a.m. in upstate New York, then dropped back down, got to Washington, D.C. at 6 a.m., slept for 30 minutes, and then went out on the town the whole day. And we spent 2 days there. Then me and him piled in because he'd flown up to D.C., and we drove down through Virginia, down to North Carolina, and I spent 3 days around there visiting people.
Yeah.
Just kind of having some fun and whatnot. And even ended up, it's funny, I've never even conversed with her since, but ended up going to a car meet, randomly getting set up on basically a date at a car meet.
Huh.
And I'm still friends with her on Facebook. I think she's married.
You should hit her up.
She had a really clean E30.
Oh, nice.
At the time.
Nice.
And no, she was pretty cool. And I was the only Saab there, naturally, as I almost am everywhere I go.
Sure.
So then continued to drive. And at that point, just before actually I got to North Carolina, the car had its really one of the few functional problems it's ever had, which is the diverter valve for the turbo basically just fell out after just slowly loosening over the years. So I just had to take apart the tubes and just reclamp it, and we're good to go.
Gotcha.
5-second fix that cost no money. After North Carolina, I drove west and went through the... I went on part of the Tail of the Dragon and through the whole Blue Ridge Parkway, and
which is gorgeous.
Oh man, I've got some photos there that were taken on a potato cam that look professional just because of that area, just because of the area.
I got some things about that from this weekend, but more on that later.
Yeah. And so I drove through, visited a really cool motor museum called the Lane Motor Museum in Nashville.
Yeah.
Which is just awesome. Recommend anybody stop there that goes through there. Went up to St. Louis, stayed a night in St. Louis, dawdled around Missouri, then stayed a night in Kansas City on the other side. I kind of was just daisy chaining my way back randomly. I didn't really have too much of a plan.
Sure.
Just kind of having fun.
Well, that kind of happens when you have extra money from your car loan.
And extra time.
Yeah, also that.
Because I'd already taken the whole week off. So I was like, oh, cool, I can dick around.
You can explore.
Yeah, and so then I got up to Omaha, stayed there, and then final night was in Cheyenne. I stayed in Cheyenne just because I was tired and I had already bombed like 8 hours from Omaha.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and I actually stayed in this really cool it was like a vintage hotel in Cheyenne. It was really badass, like probably 120-year-old one.
Oh wow!
But yeah, it was kind of cool.
That's more than vintage. That is absolutely an antique.
Yes. No, it was cool. And then bombed the rest of the way home on the final day, which would have been the 28th, which was my 4-year anniversary just this past weekend.
Yeah. And
I put on 3,500 miles, or really close to there. I'm pulling it up right now so I can quote the exact number, because I tracked it all on my GPS the whole trip. There we go. 3,548 miles to get to my doorstep. And it's 4 years, so I'll quote the max speed of 105 miles an hour that I achieved on that trip.
Not bad.
Most of the time I was actually just cruising. Sure. Moving average was... moving time was... It took me 59 hours.
Okay.
10 hours of stop time and 70 hours of total, key on time.
Yeah.
There was a portion just before the Blue Ridge Parkway where I was stuck on the freeway in the humid heat with no AC, raining.
Oh.
So I'm sweating. And keep in mind, my car has those seat covers.
Oh, no.
For about 4 hours because there was a massive wreck on the freeway.
Oh, jeez.
So I was just stopped still and could do nothing but sit there and sweat like crazy.
Yeah, I had windows down, but that can only do so much.
No. I had windows up because it was downpouring.
You couldn't even let any air out?
I mean, I had them slightly cracked, but that was it. It's just humid and hot everywhere.
Oh.
But anyways, that was where a lot of that 10 hours of stop time came from.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so made that home, and as far as used cars go, it's by far the most reliable used car I've ever purchased.
Yeah.
I know that European cars, and to some degree, because mainly, as this stigma comes from, a lot of American dumbasses just don't know how to work on anything other than the Chevy 350.
Yeah.
They get a reputation for sometimes being less than reliable, but the majority of the reason for that from everyone that I've ever touched is because they've been touched by people that should have never been touching cars to begin with.
True.
Which can be said about a lot. That argument can be said about a lot of them. I just know from personal experience, these cars are much more reliable than most from their era.
Sure, and I mean there are exceptions to that.
Oh, yeah.
I know that older Porsches for sure are very robust.
Yes,
Just when things happen, they are wildly expensive.
they're more expensive. And ironically, the Saabs aren't that way. They have more. I think they have more smaller issues spread out that don't really
Right.
affect the running. But to give you an example, I'll have people ask, "Oh, it's got to be expensive to run and hard to find parts." Hell no. That car,
Are parts not hard to find for
about
engine mechanical?
about 80% of the parts you could ever need, short of like a full engine rebuild kit or like things once it gets to that level,
Sure.
like regular service parts. Oh, any AutoZone or O'Reilly.
What if you had to rebuild your motor?
If I had to rebuild my motor, I could still get the parts. I just have to get them from a Saab specialty site.
Oh, but that's easy access.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so it's not really that hard. I mean, is that stuff being flown from Sweden to get here? Is it kind of like working on an older Lotus where you, or not even an older Lotus, if you're working on your Elise
Yeah.
and sure, the engine is out of a Matrix XRS
Yes.
and the diff and like the transmissions are out of the Corollas or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but there are still like connecting arms and like all sorts of like intricate things that are proprietary to Lotus that do wear out.
Technically speaking, that's even more proprietary because it didn't really.
What is the Lotus?
The Saab?
Oh, the Saab.
Because it did not really share componentry at all.
Sure, but like, is it harder to find Saab stuff than or more of a pain to get to obtain Saab parts than it would be for Lotus? Like shipping over from England or
No, because everything almost comes from the States. Here's what happened after Saab disbanded: is several companies banded together and bought the patents.
I'm also
for the
talking
part.
about 80s Saabs, not like the 97X and the 9 whatever.
Which actually, those are even more. Believe it or not, the newer ones are harder to find parts for.
Even the GM car equivalents are harder to
Because
find parts for?
Saab still changed so many parts on them. That
Really?
even the most... Okay, so GM owned 100% of Saab, but the most GM a Saab ever got, there was only basically 3 cars that they manufactured that were so similar to their GM or otherwise brethren that are really part swappable. Number 1 is a 92X, which is a Subaru.
It was a Subaru.
So that one, it's only really a couple body panels that are different and some emblems.
Yes.
There's really...
Verbatim, yeah.
It is a WRX wagon.
I've driven Todd Deacon's old Subaru.
Yeah.
And that felt literally like a WRX.
It was. There was very minor changes. It was pretty much 95% Subaru. The 94X was a...
Which one was that?
It's effectively a... I don't remember which SUV it is.
Because there's the 9.5.
Okay, so that...
Which is
I'll
a
get to those.
Trailblazer.
No, 9.5's a sedan.
Oh, sorry, the 9.7X
The
was...
9.7X was a Trailblazer.
The Trailblazer SS.
Yep, so that's about the same, probably about 95% GM.
Yeah.
Very few differences, just
The
badging,
9.5 Aero.
which was very much...
That was its own thing, though, wasn't it?
It was... Basically, they gave Saab a voxel platform,
Oh.
and then Saab chopped it up and changed about more than probably 60% of it.
Gotcha.
Very, there was a couple...
Wait, so what was the 9.4?
The 9, it's an SUV. I don't remember which SUV it was shared with, but there was only a few hundred of them made.
I am currently Googling just to see.
It was one of their smaller SUVs.
9.4X. What is it? Oh, whoa. Would that have been mixed with a, like a Saturn? Like the Saturn View?
Oh, shares it with the Cadillac SRX.
Oh, there you go.
Yep, the others, like, small.
For those that are interested at home, it came with a 2.8-liter turbo V6 or a 3-liter. It's the LF1 V6. I don't know what that exactly
it's just
means.
Naturally aspirated. But yeah, those 3 cars.
So Wikipedia is saying the predecessor was the 9.7X.
More or less, because at that point they stopped making the 9.7X. But they're still vastly different platforms. 9.7X was still a truck platform that was rear-wheel drive.
I wouldn't think that they would be at all in the same lineage.
Technically, they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be.
But those are the only
weird.
2 SUVs Saab ever made.
Yeah.
So in theory, it's the successor, quote unquote.
Eh.
It's also Wikipedia. Anyways, but
It is. This is why you don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, those 3 Saabs are the only 3 that were manufactured close enough to their GM brethren that a lot of parts are fairly available.
Yeah.
Other than that, the 9.5, the newer Gen 9.5 and 9.3s, which were based on voxel platforms, were heavily changed, and they're actually kind of harder to get parts for because of how much they changed.
Yeah.
You rewind, and there wasn't nearly as many made. Yeah. You rewind back to the older Saabs, and there was over a million of them made over their whole production life.
Sure.
So there's a lot more to give parts for. And so to answer your question, when Saab went bust, a bunch of companies banded together and bought the patents for all the parts and still manufacture them.
That's cool.
And so, for instance, a distributor for a Saab 900 like that, I could almost get at any AutoZone for about $30.
Not bad.
About the same as a Honda Civic of the same year. Like, it's not expensive.
Not bad.
So that was kind of my weekend update of like, I actually took that car out and we were supposed to have a meet, but
you drove it here too.
I drove it here too, yeah, just because I had it out still and it needed to stretch its legs. But
that's good.
Car needs a few things, but it's still a great, fantastic car.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear that it's holding up well over time. And
yeah, paint's gone a little because it hasn't been garaged in my ownership as much as I wish, but yeah.
That's character.
Yeah, it is what it is. So after my 30-minute rant of what I did this weekend.
Well, I mean, we could do a number of different things. We could wrap this one up, and I can talk about my weekend on our Wednesday episode.
True.
And then we can have our challenge on Friday. You want to do that?
Let's do that.
All right, cool. Go watch our shit on YouTube. GT3 isn't out yet because I'm fucking burnt out a little bit. I'll just be completely frank with you all. Things have been real busy in my life with work and photography side hustle and what I just did actually over the weekend, which I will talk to you about tomorrow. But yeah, I'm going to be working on the GT3 video. It is coming out. The published date is to be determined at this point. I'm just trying to keep my ducks in a row and keep from going insane.
It's a failing battle.
It is. It's definitely an uphill battle. It's pushing the rock up the hill. I mean, I might succeed, I might not. Who knows? Tune in at 10 and find out.
Jeez.
But yeah, go follow us on Instagram and stuff. Let us. Here's actually something for our listeners to engage with us on. Tell us where you're listening to us on, because I'm genuinely curious. I have analytics from Shout Engine, who are great. I love being able to see how big our audience is and if it's growing and who's listening to what and all the downloads and stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell me who's listening on what platform. So let us know. Mailbag.eos@gmail.com is our email. You can also just slide in our DMs. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, until next time, I've been Gavin.
I've been Justin.
And this has been the Exhibition of Speed podcast.
Bye.
Bye.